Hello, hello. So I'm going to tell a little story, like I tend to do, but this one isn't going to be sort of funny. Not that any of my stories are funny, but it's not so much light-hearted as it's going to be a bit of a bummer. Just heads up in case you're expecting like a little light-hearted romp. This is going to be sad. But it's just something I want to get off my chest. And so I talk a lot, well, maybe not a lot, but about, I used to be a much, much worse person than I am today. Not so much of my core, but, I acted up, absolute brat. And, it was a sort of, stemmed from trauma and mental illness and that sort of thing. But it's sort of, as I say, it was a reason for the behavior. It wasn't an excuse, it doesn't justify it. And in the end, I dealt with it by, working really, really hard to repair my mental health and thus my behavior, to become more mindful of my actions and to just generally, be a better person. So that's sort of relating to the conclusion of the story I'm about to tell. And this sort of starts, we'll go back to, when I was, bratty version of myself. There was this guy that I met that I knew for, a brief period of time, let's say. And, I don't even understand how this man was like such a kind, good person. But, he sort of, from the get-go, he just like started looking out for me. And it's just, there wasn't any kind of like attraction, it wasn't anything like that. It was just that this guy just had this like protective thing where he just, wanted me to realize that I wasn't a shitty person. And it was at a time when, as I said, I had acted up, I had done the wrong thing quite a lot of times. And there were a lot of people saying that the reason I acted up was that, at my core, I was just a cold-hearted, feelingless, monster, like a bitch, like just, psychopath kind of deal. And at the time, like reflecting on this, I sort of fed into that because, I had all this like, desperate hurt that I wasn't processing, that I wasn't feeling. And to pretend that I wasn't, it was the truth was I didn't care and that I, didn't need to feel because I couldn't feel is a lot easier for me to deal with at the time than to accept that, I was just pushing it away and I didn't want to feel because that kind of like processing that kind of hurt would have really like knocked me down and, been a lot harder than just pretending that I didn't feel it because I couldn't feel it, pretending, convincing myself that I was that kind of cold-hearted, nasty piece of work who didn't care about anyone. But yeah, this guy, he kept trying to convince me that, I was a better person, that I could be better and that, I wasn't the worst. And yeah, he was just so kind to me. And I guess, while convincing myself that I wasn't deserving of that kindness, I sort of did everything I could to push him away. Like, I was like, you shouldn't care about me. This is the wrong decision. Don't care about me. Don't extend this kindness to me because I don't deserve it. And, I pushed him away until eventually there was this sort of conversation where he was like, I'm done. I can't keep getting hurt when you respond to my kindness in this way. And as he should have, he was completely in the right. And I sort of, just said, well, you know what, fine, walk away. Like, that's what you need to do. And it was sort of this thing where, at the time I didn't want to, I didn't want to process the fact that I was going to miss him and then I felt bad and that, I'd been a shitty person to this man who was nothing but kind to me for no reason that I could discern, that he was just a nice, good person who did a lot for me. And, I was sort of like, oh, well, I don't care if he never speaks to me again, it doesn't bother me, he could die and I just wouldn't give a shit, and I sort of, went along convincing myself that that's the person I was, that I just didn't give a shit about this person who just, again, I know I keep saying this, but I cannot emphasize enough how kind this person was to me for no benefit to himself. And yeah, so some time passed, and and then one day I get, friend messages me, hey, let's catch up. And I went up, to this cafe to meet this friend, and he gave me the news. This man who had been nothing but kind to me, he actually died. He actually did. Yeah, he was gone, and that was the news I was getting. And it was sort of this moment that is hard to describe, that it was like everything just froze the way I remember this, and I could not tell you how long this moment went for. And it was like, when I was told that this man was dead, it was like I remembered, that what I said, like, I wouldn't care if he died, that was, and I remembered being that person who wouldn't care. And I remembered, convinced, like, in that moment, I still, like, believed that that's how I was going to respond, that, I was going to shrug it off and go, well, too bad. And it just hit me in this moment that just seemed to, could have been infinite, could have been 10 seconds. It just, like, hit me like a truck. And I just started bawling my eyes out in the middle of this cafe. And it, reflecting on it, it just, there wasn't anything selfish about this grief that I was suddenly hit by. It didn't bother me that the last conversation I'd ever had with him was me being an absolute brat. It didn't even matter to me that I would definitely never see him again. In this moment, it was just this deep sadness that, this kind, selfless man was gone too soon, and that the world would have to go on being less for not having him in it. And yeah, just bawling in the middle of this cafe for this, like, loss of this man. Just, yeah. And, it was only when enough time had gone on for me to process this that I had sort of looked at the way I responded to that news, compared it to the way I thought I would respond, even as I was in the process of receiving this news, how I thought I was going to respond, and how different it was to how I actually responded. And it sort of made me look at it and think, maybe I'm not that cold-hearted person that I needed to convince myself I was. Maybe I am the person that he was trying to convince me that I am. And I just, obviously there was going to be no making it up to him, But I figured that the best thing I could do to honour his memory and to, make it up to all the other people who were still alive that I'd hurt with my shitty behaviour was that I could, work on my shit and get better and act like a decent person. And, I did it. I thought of him, and I thought of all those other people who, I would never expect to talk to me again. They're all still alive, but part of that being a better person means I would never expect them to want to have anything to do with me, no matter how well I repent my behaviour. But yeah, no, I put everything I had into it in honour of this wonderful, kind man who had believed that I was a good person. And I did it. I fucking did it. And now I'm... Oh, sorry. This is going differently than I had anticipated this video. And there's something so poetic about, this man who tried so hard to convince me that I was a good person, who I pushed away because I needed to convince myself that I was not a good person. And that in dying, he finally managed to get that message through. And, there's no moral to this story, by the way. There's no, lesson. There's no, people say, oh, you have a fight with someone, just, end it as if, you might never see them again. So end on a good note. That's stupid. Don't do that. Sometimes it's necessary to leave a conversation on a sour note. You can't live your life expecting that every conversation, you might never see that person again. You can't live your life that way. It's not practical. It doesn't help. And yeah, as I said, there's no reason for telling this story except that I needed to tell it, that I needed to be that better person, initially to honour him. And then it ended up, being the best thing I ever did for myself as well. And, well, I guess this is just my way of saying I'm sorry to someone who did more than he could ever know for me. All right, I'm gonna leave it on that because otherwise I'm just gonna feel like blathering on forever. Yeah, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, stay safe.